Okay. My name's Dan Bidleman. I'm currently the president of the LUG. Today we're going to be talking about nuking whales. Docker, whose symbol is a whale.
Call Paul Watson right now. Sea Shepherd's in here.
And our channel's demonetized.
Wait, we get monetization for that?
Somebody does.
So,
You weren't supposed to know about this, right?
we're going to be talking about Docker containers, some advantages, disadvantages, how to set it up, and also doing Docker containers with some automation and swarms. So, first thing I want to do, I'm going to take a picture of all you fine people, because we have a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, that's right.
No,
Get in there.
while we're eating.
There, thank you. Okay. So I have set up 3 VMs. You can see one of them running here. Very poorly.
Like a black box.
Yeah, well, that's that.
Black hole, this should make it round. Nice setup for that joke, eh? Make sure you paid there for that.
So
Hey, it could
Docker
have
is a
been worse. It could
container
have brought up
system.
Windows.
All right, Docker is a container system. So the way it kind of differs from a VM is that they're both running inside of your host machine, but a VM is an entire operating system, whereas a container is a set of programs running inside of just a system that's being Docker.
So it's like a
There are-
crippled
What's that?
virtual machine.
What's that?
It's like a crippled virtual machine.
No, it's actually like a lean virtual machine.
Yeah.
It's
Like
kind of more
you
opposite.
can have Bash, you can have different systems running inside of it, but it doesn't have its own kernel. It doesn't have a lot of the supporting systems. You would just install like,
Sharing them.
yeah, you would install like MySQL and some other, like all the things that MySQL needs inside of the Docker container, and then you can deploy it out. One of the advantages of, well, we'll go through all the advantages and disadvantages I could have thought of one night. There's probably lots more on both sides, but when you build things like this, there's you're easily deploying. Okay, so when you deploy these things, you just say, hey, I want to push this to this server, to this form, to whatever, and it just breaks everything out. Are you?
You're moving a lot.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm okay with that one back there. He's like waving it over here.
Like a little creepy.
I didn't want to get Travis's face.
All right, so it's easy to deploy, okay? So when I want to deploy, say, an Apache module, I can just, once I have all my settings all set up, I can just deploy it to a server, deploy it to a set of servers, deploy it across the globe, whatever I want to do. Once you get everything built up for it, it makes it very easy to get everything running after that, and then build other things. Isolation of services allows multiple services to be run using the same ports, but being mapped elsewhere, and better security if one gets compromised. So there are problems with the security, just like there are problems with security with VMs, but it gives you a layer of isolation. Better security due to the isolation of services and configurability of access. And that, again, there's the system problems, but there's also configuration problems. A lot of the security issues you get in computing are either configuration or updating. Either you're not running, somebody finds an exploit in a particular product that you're running and you're not updating it, or you're going through and doing the configuration poorly or setting bad passwords, and the machines are getting compromised that way. So it's kind of up to you to make sure that your stuff is set up correctly. Can you guys see that all right?
Is this thing
That's
foolproof?
good.
That's a little better.
Yeah.
Nothing's full.
Nothing is full. Also, if you want to see this material, I have my site is Kipiki. It's KIPIKI.inoi.dev, and it's got a bunch of my different projects on it. This is the Docker one. And I will be enhancing this more and more as I continue to learn about Docker, so if you guys want a neat little reference.
Jax had to work back up.
I've been busy. Once I'm done with this, yes. This was the next one. There was taxes, there was other stuff.
You can back burner taxes for.
Oh
pay
yeah,
taxes?
I'm sure. What's that?
You pay taxes?
Of course. Oh. I'm a good citizen.
The 1%.
No, not that 1%.
So, updating the dependencies is easy and testable. So if I want to, let's say I build my own containers, I can build, say, an Apache container and a MySQL container and build all the dependencies in there and everything. And then once I've decided that I want to push this material out, I can say, here's this new version, and test it, push it into my test environment, and it's just literally just update it to this version, boom. And it updates them all to this version, and then they start running, and it's very homogeneous. Like it's like cookie cutter. Like you're going to be building these things, and they're easy to not have explode on you, basically. So you're not having a lot of human error in there or anything like that, except for the initial build. So as long as you get your initial build right, you're usually pretty okay.
How is it testable? Like,
Well,
what
it's
makes it more
testable.
testable?
So let's say that I wanted to roll out MySQL, right? If I did it with a set of servers, I have development server set, testing server set, production server set. If I want to upgrade MySQL to a particular version, a lot of times I'm relying on the systems like the Yum repository or something like that, and I say update or update to this version or something like that. The repository has to make sure you have to make sure you have the same version. If a newer, like if you say I want to just update, and a newer version comes out between when you do test and production, and then when you do Yum update for MySQL, your production gets a new version. Like you can hedge your bets and like change how you work on that type of stuff, but Docker allows you to just kind of encapsulate it where you can be like, I want to deploy this version, or I want to deploy latest, but I control my own repository. You can control your own repository in Linux on the different repositories for Debian or Red Hat or whatever. But because you're taking a container that has every bit of material in it and just shipping that to the host systems, it's basically more simple. It's more complex in one way because you're having to build all that in there and everything and update all the little bits inside of it. But when you deploy an image, that image is static across the board. So you don't have gotchas like, MySQL needs, let's say, libc version 2.3.5
Right,
R7.
so you get to avoid the, it works on my machine.
Yeah, you have
Why
consistency.
does that work
You have
on
consistency
the
across the
other
nodes because you're deploying the
Right,
exact
and
same
so-
image, same configuration, same everything.
Right, and
Yeah, the
so
libraries are the same across all of it, so yeah, that makes sense.
Does it have to be the same hardware on everything?
It has to be the same hardware that you compile it for.
Right.
And so generally they're built for, and we're going to go over that too, but generally you build it for like x86, x64,
Yeah.
or ARM64, or two versions of IBM. So it's like Power and C, I think.
Yeah.
And those are the supported platforms, and so you build your containers for that platform, and then you can
Makes sense.
replicate that anywhere. So I can put a Docker, as long as I can get Docker running on Gentoo, on Arch, on Windows, on Mac, on whatever, as long as it's the same CPU architecture, which is going to be x86, 64, which is very generic, then boom, I can just shove it out wherever. I don't have to be like, I need to go download this version of MySQL for this thing that's compiled in this way. It's just MySQL.
Which won't
Done.
work.
What's that? Well, yeah, and you know that it
Yeah,
works.
it's like basically like packaging an
Yeah.
application, all of its dependencies, and just pushing that.
Yeah. Also, regression is really easy. Well, not regression, but now we're going to call it regression. That's the wrong word for it, but you get the idea. Basically, I push out a new version, right? We push out Apache 2.4.6, and it blows everything up. Something is wrong with that container image. There's something wrong with the config. There's something wrong somewhere, and we need to back that out. Well, what I can do is I can just go say Docker deploy this version, and it just it just puts out, it's not really a rollback because when you update.
That's true, you're actually completely blowing
You're
it
just
away.
switching to a different image.
One of the things that you have to understand, one of the biggest differences between VMs and Docker containers is when you update a Docker container, you're literally destroying the previous one and putting a new one in its place. Okay, so it's a complete destruction and rebuild of the asset. Whereas a VM, you're going in there and muddling around on your own and you're kind of updating and stuff like that. So it can be a lot more complex with VM as opposed to a Docker image. So it helps prevent the breakages because if you're testing and you're testing a canned environment, right? So you have these libraries, everything is exactly how it is in every single instance that you deploy of this particular image. The disadvantages are, unless you build or review the Docker image, now this goes for pretty much everything, every piece of software, but you don't know what's in it. Unless I inspect every bit of that, and inspecting every bit of that is very complex because there's lots of logic you can put into code that looks fine, but's actually really terrible, or backdoors, compromises, you can make them look like just regular, everyday code. So you have to go through it with a fine-tooth comb, or inspect it with a program that goes and looks for those things, but those are not always perfect either. And so you have to trust the people that are making these things. And this is like, you're getting stuff off of GitHub, right? And so it's just like, for my house stuff, that's fine. I'm running some, Docker containers, and I want to run like MotionEye. I trust the MotionEye guys to just package this, or like the Linux server.io people, they package things. And it's great. But if I'm running this as a business, and I'm relying my business on this, I want to know where I get it from. And so like I might get one from the Apache Foundation for Apache, but I wouldn't get one from like GitHub from like Joe, So Joe's works better, but it's not the official one that's sanctioned and all this different stuff. For when you're running a VM or something like that, and you're using a package repository, you're trusting the package maintainers and the people that are building the code. Those are usually locked down into basically supply chains, right? And so a package, or somebody, let's say the Apache Foundation makes Apache, right? Then they release a tarball, they say, here's our tarball, here's our SHA-1 sum, enjoy. The Debian package maintainer is like, ooh, a new version. Grabs that, checks the sum against it, yes, the sum matches, we're good to go. Builds it out, packages it, shoves it up into the Debian mirrors for testing, but signs it, okay? Now, I'm sure there probably is a signing system for this, but again, like this is trusted versus not trusted. So they sign it, they put it into the repository, and everything goes through, and it's great. It's a good system. It can get compromised. It has been compromised. Gentoo's got compromised. Debian's got compromised. They push out bad packages when they get compromised, and somebody gets the key, and they can sign whatever they want. So here's a new version of SSH. Enjoy. Just happens to have the back door, Hey. So again, this is all software. You can do this to anything. So it depends on how you're getting things. I'm just saying, like, if you want to run your business off of something like this, make sure you know where your sources are. And or research, I didn't actually research doing authenticated sources or anything like that, but maybe the Docker site itself is authenticated sources, I'm not sure. So, security is good, but nothing is foolproof. Applies to everything. Knowledge of the product is being deployed. One of the advantages of building it yourself is you learn it, right? So if I want to deploy Apache, I want to deploy MySQL. With Docker, I literally say, deploy it there, go. Now I have to know how to configure it, but I don't really know what its dependencies, what its assets are, how the initial setups are. I have a container that's set up by somebody else, and they tell me, oh, we'll just run this, you're good. Right? So now I don't know what I'm doing per se, and so learning that along with deploying things out of Docker is probably a good hand-in-hand option. So any questions about here? Yeah?
Yeah, I'm a little confused. Like if I want to set up Apache and I use the package system, and then doesn't it take care of the dependencies and stuff for me? It seems like, isn't Docker a little redundant?
Well, the
I'm
idea
not
here
getting
is
something here.
It's isolation.
Yeah.
you install Apache for your website. Cool.
Right.
So I want to run WordPress. Great. So I install Apache, install WordPress, and now I'm done. Now WordPress is a PHP script. It has no dependencies, so you can't just hit apt install Apache or WordPress. I don't think. But hopefully not. But anyways, so you install it. You go into the website. You just hit next a couple times. Oh, you're missing a couple PHP packages. You gotta go and reinstall those. Cool. Now you're done. Now, oh, I want another website. I want to run a ticket system. But the ticket system doesn't support the particular version of PHP that you're using. So now you have another version of PHP. Maybe they only support Nginx. Actually, that wouldn't be a problem because you'd have. Anyways, but if you were to do that, so now you have two different services you want to run on the same system. In theory, they would have to share resources, share packages, share system libraries. With Docker, they wouldn't.
Yeah.
They're each running independently of each other on the same hardware. And that way you know that this version, WordPress can have its version of PHP it wants, and whatever else. QTM can have its own version of Apache and SQL and whatever else.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody actually use Docker?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Tons of
A
people.
lot of
It
people.
helps me if we get some practical
I actually use it quite a
examples.
bit.
Somebody could tell me that.
The big feature of Docker Enterprise is that you can have your own private repos, and Docker hosts them for you,
Oh, nice.
and the whole supply chain thing. So your whole business would be, ooh, I need a new web server. You would just, your DevOps people would be like, new web server, go! And your IT department hopefully would have prepared a Docker image that's everything exactly the way you want it. And boom, and that's how a lot of companies are scaling up their website. Have a website, you get /dot in, you get a bunch of new visitors. Well, with Docker and some deployment scripts, you can deploy new web servers for your website quickly.
And it does, the other platform that you can do this on, Windows and Mac are supported only for CE, which is Community Edition. Well, Windows Home, like Windows 10. Windows Server has an EE version. There's Linux versions of EE. I don't think there's a Mac version of EE, which is Enterprise Edition. But there's cloud versions of EE. And so I can go out to like AWS and be like, boom, I need 100 Apaches. And instead of spinning up 100 VMs, I'm spinning up 100 containers, which are smaller and they're faster to deploy. And I just, boom, 100 VMs, and they all they're all pre-configured because of how I built my compose script and everything's good to go.
And I'm sure we're getting ahead here, but the benefit of that is that you don't have to go and then update every week 100 VMs.
Right, and we will show one of the things that's really cool about the compose and using stuff. Yes, sir.
It's one of the advantages you forgot to mention is the efficiency of it. It's you get more performance out of the hardware by running containers versus a virtual machine. Virtual machines have more overhead to them.
It's very
So
good.
for efficiency purposes, a lot of companies will go to use Docker or images or just containers in general versus a virtual machine for the efficiency of the system to running.
It's much, much, much thinner. You don't have to run a file system. You don't have to
Full
run
OS.
a kernel, full OS, all the dependent.
You can't typically run
processes.
different than what you're running on, but that's the only
Right.
caveat to that.
Yeah,
You
you're
can't
all
run Windows
running
on
the same
Linux.
kernel.
It's usually not an issue.
Yeah.
So.
Was it?
A lot of software companies are releasing their software as Docker images, so
Yes.
which is
It's-
really a big advantage for you. If you want to test it, it's
It's
easy.
a very easy way to also ensure that you don't have to troubleshoot dependency issues and stuff from everybody's different machines. You can just download the Docker image, spin it up, and go.
I can't tell you how many times I've updated a machine, be it Gen 2 or Debian or CentOS or whatever. I update it, I restart it because it has a new kernel or something, and all of a sudden Apache doesn't work because like now my wiki needs this version of PHP, and then this version of PHP they don't support anymore, so they got rid of it. And so now we're on 7 as opposed to 5, and so and it just blows everything out, and I'm having to sit there and troubleshoot it for 3-4 hours trying to figure out how to regress it and do all this different stuff. It doesn't happen with Docker. I upgraded to another Docker image, it explodes for some reason, I downgraded to the previous image, I'm good again. It's really nice to be able to just do something, and I say it's a disadvantage to not knowing some of the products, but I don't need to know how to set up things like camera software. I want to have a ubiquity controller. I want to have a camera watcher. I use Motion Eye. I don't really care about setting those up. They have a lot of dependencies, and they're really fickle. Like, they're really fickle.
Just like any user.
Yeah, and
Question
so I just build a Docker container, I say go, and it just works.
The question is, if you apt-get and it has all the dependencies, do you just hit Y?
Yes.
Then in that case, you're ignoring what a deficiency of Docker is, which is it doesn't show you all that straight in your face. There's plenty of places to look, of course.
Well, sure.
You can very easily go look at that file and Google everything, but
I'm a bit confused. We're talking about container, no, we're talking about the image, right?
An image is, okay.
You know, you create your container, you generate the image, you have a binary somewhere there, right? Now you go and you update your container, you generate a new image, right?
No. So the image is, let's say that I'm the Docker, or I'm GitHub, right? I'm GitHub, and I made a container, right? It's the way that I provide it to you is called an image, right? So I give you a Docker image, and you put that in, and that image is a container. And so when you're running it and everything, it's
Yeah, I'm talking about the definition that before you run the Docker build and the Docker compose and everything, and create your image, because you can version your image, right? So you can have like multiple versions of the same container, and then if the new image blows up in your face, you can just take that down and bring the previous image.
Yeah.
Right? So when you patch that container, not necessarily
No, you don't patch
blow
containers.
everything.
You do not patch containers.
Mm-hmm.
The images are what you install, okay? So I install Apache 2.4.1, and that's my container. It's running the 2.4.1 image, all right? Now I don't need multiple images to spawn 20 more of them. They all use the same image. And then I get 2.4.2, I download that image, and
Oh, you're
I
talking about.
blow this container away,
Okay, so
and then I rebuild it using the 2.4.2.
yeah, we're talking about the two different things. For example, let's say that I have my own application, right? Java, C, whatever you want to call it, right? My own code there. I can use that and create my own image, my own container. What you're talking about are those containers provided by, other companies, like Apache, like things like that, right?
Well, you would just make a container image.
Mm-hmm.
So you would have to build all the dependencies, all the different things into your image. But I have never built an image. I've only used images.
A lot of times they start with a base operating system. You'll start with like a base Debian or a base Ubuntu and then kind of stuff packages on top of that. And if packages aren't available to like a repository, you'll compile it yourself and make it that way.
I'm sorry for all the stupid questions.
That's not stupid.
Throw stuff at me. When you're saying image, it's like when I get an image of an operating system, that's like binaries for Linux. And Docker's like the same thing, all the images just for the software and the dependencies.
really, I like to think of it as live booting a CD.
Yeah, that's the best way.
So
It's a
if
fully,
you want
fully
to,
contained operating
right,
system.
look, imagine you make a live CD for a particular application, for, I don't know what that here, archive team, right, so the archive team image, right? Archive team wants you to be able to run their software, run their code, and do and complete their task.
Right.
They could give you a VM appliance, which is a full OS, and you boot it up, and you hit update, and you update, whatever, or they give you a Docker file, Docker image, I like to call it Docker file, I'm sure it says it, and it's essentially, imagine you have a computer, and you put in a live CD, and you hit boot, and there it is. Your config files and stuff, the running files can be stored separately on a flash disk, say. But when it's time to update, you don't apt update on that spinning CD, you just toss CD away, get a new CD.
Okay.
Pretty much.
Pretty similar thought process there.
It's actually a good way to describe it.
Okay.
So this is the Archive Team Warrior site. Well, this is GitHub, but that's how you would pull the images down. And you can probably explore in here and get the code and figure out how they built theirs, but they just basically on this main page, which is the README, they tell you how to use it, which we'll be kind of going over that in a while. So let's move on because we do need to, there's a lot to go through. So prior to setup, we'll just kind of go quick over this. Let's say you wanted to set it up with Debian. There's a bunch of different CE images. So you use Debian, CentOS, Fedora, Ubuntu. You have Mac, Windows, and then you have ones that are not supported by the the Docker people, but they're supported by the community. So you have like Gentoo and Arch.
And you said Docker images. This is actually the Docker binary.
This is Docker itself.
Right. The
Okay,
program
so this
that
is
runs.
the program Docker. You need to install Docker on your system,
On the
and
host.
then you can start using it. Yeah.
And then you can boot images,
Right.
if you will.
So if we look at the Debian one, you just kind of walk through and build the stuff out. So Docker EE is available for well, actually no, it's not available. But I think on the other pages with like the CentOS one or the Red Hat one, it might have Docker EE built right there, so it takes you somewhere else. But it says basically how to do it. It's going to walk through. I'm not going to really walk through this because you can look at it on your own. For the image, I'll just tell you like the quick steps that you need to do to install it because we got a lot to go through. So what you need to do is you need to set up a repository. These are the things that you need to set up the repository itself. You add the Docker GPG key to apt. Then you can check the GPG key to make sure that it's right. After you check that, then you add a repository. In this case, we're adding a stable repository. This is the Docker repository for Debian. You have special directions if you're on easy or something. Then you install Docker. So you do apt-get update. That refreshes your repository list in Debian. Then you install Docker CE. Oh. You can install a bunch of other things as well, but you install these things and then you're able to start running stuff. So you do Docker run hello world and boom, now you can run hello world. So it takes you, like this is the documentation is usually pretty great. It's actually, like it seems to miss some stuff, but like you can get that out of the man pages or the help documents on your system. But it's a pretty good document set. So I would encourage you if you're going to play with Docker to learn some of it.
Read the manual.
Yeah, I mean that's how you learn things, right? So once we get Docker installed, we're not really going too far with that. I build aliases, right? So a lot of these commands are really long, and so I just made aliases. If you haven't made aliases in Linux, it's a great way of doing things that you do a lot over and over and over again. So let's say that you CD to like this huge directory like 3 times a day. Well, you can just make an alias that says like my CD or something, and it takes you to that giant directory. And so in my case, I wanted to run like Docker Compose, and it's got like, this was from my old Debian version. It installed it in the user local bin, or user local bin, which wasn't source, so I had to do the full thing, and then I wanted it to use the Docker Compose file, so I just typed GC, and it does all that. And I just drop it into my .bashrc, and then as soon as I log into the system, I can just type GC, and it does that giant thing for me. So we'll start. All right, so Docker Community Edition. Here's some commands that I find helpful, and we're going to actually run through some of these as well after we build them. So if I want to clean up the system, I should probably reorder these, but if I want to clean up the system, if I have a lot of old images or anything like that, I want to prune the images, I can clean up the system by cleaning up unused containers. If I want to see the status, I use Docker PS. Pretty much everything starts with Docker and then something. Because you're running Docker and then you're telling Docker to do something. Then we're going to say, if I want to stop all the containers, I can do Docker stop and then $Docker PS -A -Q, which would give me all the pins. or all the Docker names. I could do Docker stop on a particular Docker name or container name, Docker kill container name, which is a lot more aggressive. Pull new images, so if I have a thing and it says latest, which is the default, I could just say Docker pull and then the name of the package I'm trying to pull, and it's like, oh, there's a new version of latest, and it pulls that down. Builds a container. Runs a container, but you will run something into the container. So here, I would say Docker run container name IT bash. So it would basically get you into the container in a bash shell, and you can play around. And we'll do all these real quick. It's just I don't have very much screen space here. So Docker logs, and you can add follow. So it'll actually give you the logs of the Docker image. So if there's something going wrong, you can sit there and look at the logs. If you want to remove a container, you can do RM. If you want to remove the image, you can do RMI. And remember, the difference between containers and images is an image is basically your CD, right? Your container is how many of that CD, like the CD is your one piece of code, right? A container is how many times you run that code on your system. So if I run the Apache code, it's going to use the same piece of code, but it's going to run it 10 times, right? All right. So here's a couple of container examples for building them. I wrote, a long while back, I wrote a script that would build containers for me. All right. That's just the simplest way of doing it. You're doing everything on the command line, and you're building everything from scratch. So I had a script, and it was called update containers. And all this was in that. So I say Docker stop smoke ping. Smoke ping's a little pinger application. It's actually really cool if you have problems with, it's kind of a monitoring system. You can sit there and look at different assets on the internet, and you know, like you can put your website on there, you can put your servers on there, you can check your ISP and all that kind of stuff. So I say Docker stop smoke ping. What that does is it stops smoke ping with a container named smoke ping. And I say Docker remove smoke ping, so it deletes, it gets rid of this container named smoke ping. And then I say Docker pull Linux server /smoke ping. All right, now it knows that it can go out to the Docker site, and that is one of the one of the images. And since I didn't specify, you can actually do colon and a version if you wanted to. Since I didn't specify anything here, it's just going to pick up what's called latest. Okay. So now I've stopped my container, I've destroyed my container, so it's not running and it's not there anymore. And I've pulled the newest image. Now I can create a new container. All right. So I say Docker create, and then I name it with name smoke ping. I give it a port designation. So I say I want you to map port 80 inside of the container to port 4080 outside of the container. I want it to use a parent UID and a parent group ID of 1002, which in my system was public. All right, so it's a non-privileged user. I don't want all my containers running as root because, again, I'm trying to be safer. The default way to run these is as root. And if you're wanting to bind to things that are under port 1024, you need to run them as root. So if you're running Apache and you're running that as, you know, to be on port 80 of your system, you need to run the container as root. But I wanted to not do that, so I'm mapping it to a higher port, and I'm using a non-privileged user. Then you can pass options, like the -E time zone, America, New York. So I'm telling it, hey, I want you to use an option time zone, and I want to use America, New York.
The options are specified by the smoke ping
Right.
package. Or
Yes, these people will tell you what you can have, and I'll go to this site here and show you how they tell you about that. Then you can map things into the container. This is the really special part. For containers, when I want to update it, I'm literally destroying the container. So I'm running Apache, and if I stick my website into the Apache container, which you should not do, and then you want to update it,
This is the bit I wasn't.
you have to destroy the container and then rebuild the
The
container.
data has to be separate.
Okay?
Otherwise,
That means that the data, the configuration, anything that you ever want to preserve has to be outside of the container. Okay? So I have mapped these things out. So I have home public smoke tank data. 'Cause
It's
that's
on
just-
his local machine.
that's on my host.
Yeah.
Okay? And I'm mapping that to slash data inside of the container. And I'm taking home public smoke tank config, and I'm mapping that to slash config inside of the container. Right? So there's only two there, but it's the config and it's the data, right? Yes.
Did that smoke pane program present some sort of a security concern that you wanted to put it inside a container running?
No, I just didn't feel like trying to build it. Containers make it a lot easier for me to deploy things without having to, one, kind of have a whole bunch of different programs running on my machine, but two, I can just port them elsewhere. So like when I rebuilt my server at home, all I had to do is, like all of my material was on an NFS server that's shared to this primary machine. And so I just shut off the primary machine, rebuilt the machine, put Docker on it, put my compose file on it, and said go. And then all of my Docker containers were running again. So I didn't have to do anything to get everything running again. Just boop, and everything's good. So it is very easy to deploy things when you get everything kind of rolling with this.
The opposite would be to apt install SmokePing. But then SmokePing's got to install this, install that, and all of a sudden you have a whole bunch of random stuff on your computer that you don't want necessarily because it's your server. It's just nice to be able to say, here's SmokePing. Everything's contained. If it has a weird version or whatever, I don't need to have curl, I don't know, on my primary machine. Oh, but can I use wget? But SmokePing requires curl. Pretend. Well, now SmokePing can have curl and be all of it in this little container by itself and doing its own thing, and I can have my host not have that.
Yeah. Or if it needs a particular version of curl, but then archive team needs a different particular version of curl. Then you're dealing with conflicts.
Right, which does happen.
Yeah.
You know, a lot actually.
It happens.
Seems like way more than it should.
Yeah.
But because that's just unfortunately developers are like, I like this version, and I'm sticking with it.
Yeah. Or well, it's not necessarily that they're doing it. It's just I built this package, and it requires these versions of things, and the way that they built it is like, all right, it needs version 3. I don't remember what the curl versions are, but it needs 3.2, and then curl comes out. Hey, we got the new curl version 3.7.
We
Upgrade.
broke some stuff.
Yeah.
If
Well,
you use it
and-
3.3, we broke some stuff in 3.7, but live with it.
right. And
And
so
maybe a
whenever
better
3.
example would be Python.
Python, yes.
Yeah, Python, whatever.
Because,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
because,
yeah,
like, you know,
Python 2
when did the
and
Python
3 is
3?
a great example of that.
Yeah.
Python 2 and 3 are not at all the same thing.
Yeah.
And
Especially 2.7 to 3, as
you're
Travis
right.
pointed out last week during Michael's presentation.
Yeah. So if you have a program that relies on Python 2 and you install it onto a system that only has Python 3, you're SOL.
There's virtual environments, there's other ways of dealing with that without going into the complexity of
But-
Docker.
Actually,
You'd have to
Docker is simple.
recompile the program, you'd have to recode the program to do different things. Or
Refactor, yeah.
jump
Python
through a
does
whole
have
bunch of
virtual
hoops.
environments.
Yeah.
This
All right,
is
so
a
let's go back to
different
curl.
version of
All right, you have curl 3.3, and Debian stopped supporting it because 3.7 is the new stuff that's got all these security features, and they had to get rid of these flags.
Let's be honest,
Well,
it's gonna be curl 1.7 on Debian.
Right, but Archive Team Warrior only can run on 3.2 because it needs the flags that 3.7 got rid of. All right, now you're in a place where my operating system doesn't support the thing that this thing needs. And so as a package maintainer, I have to sit there and try to work around it or do something weird. And if this is not a well-maintained package, then maybe it gets missed. And they upgrade the curl version, and when you do your apt-get upgrade, all of a sudden your Archive Team Warrior just stops working. You gotta figure out why.
I like that in virtual environment thing because yes, Perl had to get around that. They built an entire different system, virtual environment. They used the entire system to accommodate for the fact that all different versions exist. This is almost like that, just abstracted a layer. It's for the whole system, and the programs have no idea that they're inside of a container. They don't know. They don't care.
Yeah, it's just a program.
Right.
It is running on the system. It's just running it in a container. So after I get this built, then I can do Docker start smokeping. Now there are other ways of doing that. For instance, like this. If I wanted to build, let's say I wanted to build 10 archive team warriors. I wanted to, boom, 10 of them, because I really like the Internet Archive and I want to help them out. And I don't want to sit there and make, like, run 10 of the different archives and like build all this stuff by hand. I can just put it in a script, right? So I say Docker pull this guy, and then for I in 1.09 do. And then in bash, if you put numbers like 1.09, and notice also how I specified 01 through 09. I could do 01 through 22 like this. Whereas if I did 1 through 22, it wouldn't give me the 2-digit. And the way I use it in the script, that's important. So I want 9 containers. Do, so this is my loop. Then I say Docker stop archive team underscore Docker sign I. So 01. Docker remove archive team dollar sign I. 01. Docker run daemonize -d name archive team underscore dollar sign I again. Environment. Down, and this is the E you see up there. There's different ways of I actually do it in here too. Environment and E. But downloader, my downloader name, so it would be like whatever my chosen name on their site is. Another environment is select a project, so you can select a specific project. You say auto or whatever. I say another environment option would be concurrent items, so it has 6 concurrent runners. And then ports, and I do 80 $I again, because I'm giving it different port numbers for this. Remaps to 8001. So each one of the containers doesn't need to be changed. They're all running, as far as they know, on 8001. But on my host system, they're going to be 8001, 8002, 8003, 8004, so on and so forth. Restart unless stopped. And if I stop the containers and then I restart the computer, the container will continue to be stopped. If I have the container running and I pull the plug out of my server and I plug it back in and I turn it back on, the ones that are running will start back up on their own. There's our process ID and group ID again, and then what project we're running, and done. And then it'll just sit there and spiral through all 10 of those and build them all up. Easy peasy.
Now, I will note that in there where he says, you said Docker stop archive team 01 and remove archive team 01. Note he's not deleting the image. So when he says Docker pull archive team warrior Docker file, it's downloading. It's a new version. You now have both images on your computer. And then when you do archive team / warrior Docker file in the Docker run command, it's going to run the latest by default. So he's deleting the containers, but not the image for the old image. Downloading a new image, booting up with the new image, but the old image still exists.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to roll back, you could very easily change the last line. There was a Docker team warrior Docker file : and then whatever version last worked for him.
Yeah. So you change it right there.
So Docker RM only deletes the container, not the image.
So without the colon, it just automatically assumes latest?
Yes.
Okay.
Latest is the default. If you want to do a specific version, or if you can have different branches. There are some products that have you could have the stable branch, the testing branch, or like if you have a piece of software that has if you bought these particular features, you can have this branch, or if you want the free one, you got that branch, and you can specify those. And then it'll choose latest from that branch, or something like that.
And so up there above, you have the Docker
Yeah.
clean and purge and stuff. That's where you see, wow, I pruned. There it is.
Yeah.
I got 12 images because every week the archive team updates their image. I update my image. I get a new image, boot up all my new containers with that new image, and then you do that every week, and all of a sudden you have 12 images, 13 images.
Right. And so this is where that image prune would be nice, because then you're actually getting rid of the images that are just hanging out in your system, using up space that you're not using anymore. You want to prune them.
I've seen instructions will have in your automatic script, keep the latest image in one image prior. Just in case the latest image has
How
problems.
can you specify that was the prune
Is there a way to say?
Prune is using unused images. It's going to get rid of any unused images. You can do the RMI, which is up here. There may be options to prune that, like say, do everything except for the last 2 images or something. I don't know.
Yeah, latest in 2 versions back, or
Yeah, like we could just do.
I believe there is a way for you to list all the images that you have, and then you can loop through them,
Yeah.
removing just what you want.
I want to say the thing I saw online
Trying to remember that.
was exactly that. It was list them all and then delete all but 2 of them.
So here's all the different things for image, and then I can do I think I can do image
LS.
prune. Yeah.
Wait.
So,
provide filter values until timestamp.
yeah. So it's got some things in there. You could probably kind of tailor it or try to figure out timestamps or whatever. And yeah.
And I'm pretty sure the only way it knows a container is unused if it's not booted, right? If you download
it's
an
not
image
a
and don't ever boot a
Well,
container with it, in prune it would.
An image is associated to containers, whether they're up or not.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Okay. So you have an image and it's associated with a particular container. If the container is down, I think the Docker system room will get it. But and so it's a little dangerous, I believe. I mean, look at Docker system. Okay. Remove unused data. Removes unused images. And so
Maybe the all is what you would be.
yeah, I'm not sure.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, it's just ways of cleaning up your system and keeping it tight. So if we want to build one of these images, right? So I'll go ahead and show you how to build one of these images. There are other. Where's my mouse go? There are other ones I have going on in here, and this one's actually a really good one too. It's kind of complex, but there's a project called Steam Cache, and this is one of those times where building this system, I didn't want to build this system, I just want to deploy this thing as service, and I want to make it work, but I don't want to sit there and go like, well, this is how they customly did everything and all this kind of stuff, because what this
Especially
thing
when you're
does,
trying to do it on the spot.
right, like I
You
was
have
trying
the
to do
LAN
this,
party going and
and the LAN
you
party.
need to do it now.
Yeah.
You
So
don't
we-
have time to learn how to set this up.
Yeah, I was running a LAN party at my house with like 20 people in there, and
We're all updating.
yeah, everybody's updating Steam. It's like the New Year, so there's a sale. Everybody's hammering Blizzard servers. There's
Everyone
probably
in the world is.
Yeah, everybody in the world is hammering
But
Blizzard
you've got
servers.
20 people eating up his ISP, all his bandwidth, basically.
So like somebody wanted to download. They went to legally download Blizzard Diablo. Right, they wanted to play Diablo 3, which is a pretty big game. It's like 50 gigs or something. And so they went and they bought that game, and then they went to the Blizzard downloader and they downloaded that game. And it took them all day, all right? Because Blizzard servers were crippled. They were getting so hammered with the sales and I think like Overwatch had just came out or something like that. And so...
I think there was also a DDoS going on.
And there was probably a DDoS, so like this guy was downloading at like half a megabit. 50 gigs, half a megabit. Takes a while.
And it was not his internet either.
Right, no, this was on my internet.
Well,
Oh, yeah,
your internet was not the bottleneck.
Right, my internet wasn't the bottleneck, it was Blizzard servers. So I got this thing running. I had him wait to download it until I got this thing running. I got this thing running, and what it does is at my router, I was taking all of the services, so like Blizzard's download service, Microsoft's download service, Steam's download service, all of those things. I say, all of those servers are not where you think they are, they're that server right there.
Yes, that's a man in the middle.
It's a local.
It is a man in the middle.
But it's a very handy one.
Right, and so what this thing is it's actually an Nginx reverse proxy.
Wow.
And I gave it a 2 terabyte cache, all right? And it has 2 components. One component is the reverse proxy. Now, if I tell, what happens in a man in the middle? What happens is, let's say that I'm the man in the middle between Travis and the screen, right? I tell him I'm the screen, and I give him all the data on the screen, right? I take my picture and
I
hand it
just
to
trust that you're accurate with that.
Right.
So I run.
So if he just trusts it, then, oh, there you go, that's port 80, right? Unencrypted traffic. But if I say, oh, here's this picture, and there's encryption on there, if I break the encryption,
I don't trust it anymore.
he can't trust it anymore. He has keys, those things have keys, and it's public-private key authentication.
And it aired out, so I don't trust it. And
Right.
fail.
So if I try to hand it to him, not only is it encrypted, so I can't read it anyway, but if I somehow can read it, and I try to hand it to him,
The keys don't
the
match.
keys don't match, and he's not going to trust it, okay? So the second part of this is what's called an SNI proxy, okay? Sorry. So the second part of this is called an SNI proxy. An SNI proxy forwards traffic, forwards encrypted HTTPS traffic to and from the destination servers. So this machine has the proper names of the DNS for the different systems. And so he goes out and he passes the traffic back and forth. The unencrypted traffic he can cache. And so a lot of the distribution services, what they do is they make little 1 megabyte chunks of the game that you're trying to download, right? So I have a 50 gig game and I'm trying to download this. It's going to hand me a whole bajillion 1 megabyte chunks, right? Well, I can save those locally. So if the service is running on non-encrypted, which is usually the case, because there's ways of checking it on your system, there's going to be like summing and doing
You're
everything.
doing key signing and then.
Right, so like the material that comes out of Windows, Linux, game services, most of it's unencrypted. And a lot of people are like, oh no, it's like, no, you
It's
shouldn't
fine,
want
you can't
that.
tamper with it.
Right, you can't tamper with it because you have key signing, right?
And to be clear, these companies intentionally make it unencrypted
Right,
Yes.
to support this caching capability.
yes.
Caching and then
Also,
also to remove the overhead of the SSL.
there's a huge overhead in
And
SSL.
this is all the server does is distribute downloads. So
Right. So if they wanted to SSLize this material, they would have to like double or triple the number of servers that are running it. And it's harder on your machine. And so you have a really, like somebody that's barely able to run the game to begin with. And now they're furious because they're downloading it and they can't watch porn.
and this is just a this is
And
just
that's
a
on film, on SD.
Beautiful.
It's facts of life, it's okay.
Yes. So the SNI proxy handles that for us. Literally, it says, oh, this is encrypted traffic. So it's listening on. Now here, this is another way of designating the port. I say, I want 10.0.0.7, so I want this specific IP, because the machine has multiple IPs on the network. I want port 80. Also notice that I do not specify the EEG ID or the EU ID. I need to be on port 80 for this. So I have to run this process as root. Okay? So, now this is running as root. He's running on port 80. Traffic that's coming to him, he forwards, or he says, do I have this piece of material? No. Go and grab it, store it, hand it to the person. Do I have this piece of material? Yes. Here you go. All right, that's what he does. This guy runs on port 443, which is another root port. You can't be not root and be on that port. So, I get that packet, and I say, oh, it's an encrypted packet. Its destination is over here. Here you go. And it just sends it along without modifying, which is very important. Like if you modify it, basically if you read it, and then you repackage it and send it to the destination, you've modified that packet. Now nobody trusts it. Okay, so the really important thing for SNI proxies is that you're literally just taking the packet without modifying it, you see where it's supposed to go, and you send it. You don't modify it at all. All right? And then that builds your little system.
And why does he
that's
have
great.
Why does he have to have 443? Because update.steam.com, the DNS entry, would be typically whatever Steam server is, but his DNS server in his house is actually 10.0.0.7. So when my computer goes, hey, update.steam.com, I'd like this file, please. I'm not talking to Steam anymore, I'm talking to his proxy.
Right.
And if my updater goes, well, real quick, let me download the latest keys over HTTPS, and then give me a list of available downloads, cool. And then I'll start the download over HTTP. That's why you have to do both.
And there are other people that actually do HTTPS. It's very rare, but I think like Ubisoft or something does HTTPS instead of HTTP. But to end that story, we had this 50 gig download. It took all day to do that. Then like 10 other people
For one guy
downloaded
to do
it.
and then
Yeah.
everybody else gets it in like 3
Yeah,
minutes.
everybody else got it a gigabit. So, I mean, that was great.
Yeah, literally go fix yourself a drink, come back and enjoy your game.
Right.
So you built your own content delivery network.
I did build my own CDN.
Would that work as any kind of a, anywhere that you could normally use a content, a CDN? I mean, for other
This
things
is
besides
a this
Steam.
is a
internal
this is an
first line.
Nginx.
Yeah, but I mean, anything for Steam.
This is an
and stuff
Nginx
like that.
reverse proxy. It would work with anything that's HTTP.
Okay.
Right.
And
Yes.
this method would work with HTTPS. Actually, one of the reasons I say generic here is they have different versions, and if you use generic, you can use it for all kinds of stuff, like Windows Update
Yes.
and all kinds of different services, apps. You can use that for all of this stuff. And so it's literally anything that goes over 80, you're just doing a reverse proxy and storing that data. And this is actually very
Very handy.
but very common way. It's very old, actually. Because back in the day when, like, I mean, this place probably has a gigabit in this house.
Back
right?
in the day when it was 56K.
Right, and like you have 3 telephone lines and an ISDN, right?
That banner for Google is actually a lot of bandwidth.
Right, so like you have an image that every one of your employees are picking up every day. Well, now you have it stored locally, and it's there, done, you know? So that's why those things exist.
I run an app proxy on my server, so when I update 10 servers, I download one dev file, and all my servers, you know, they don't know they're talking to proxy, they just talk to the particular repo, or the fake repo, and it just passes it through, caches it, and I'll see, you know, a incredible speed increase.
Not to mention your bandwidth goes down, like
Right.
your external bandwidth,
I'll update 30 servers, 30 VMs,
and it was all
simultaneously,
full.
and I downloaded one file.
Okay, so on my phone, it's doing pretty okay, but this, I'm going ahead and running this smoke ping one. Now notice I didn't do the RM and stuff because it doesn't exist right now in the system. It downloads these pieces of the images. Now some images share different things, and so like if I have another image that uses the same core, like if you have 2 or 3 different images and they use the same core stuff and they just have 1 or 2 other bits, they can share those cores. So it's kind of nice. And then if like another image needs a different type of core, and we'll download that core instead. Here's a digest, so it is actually, it is signed, so that's good. So this, if you're getting it from Docker, it is signed like you would get from like apt or something. So it says, hey, I downloaded a newer image for Linux server smoke ping latest, and remember, latest, I didn't put latest. Latest is the default. Then I say Docker create, all that stuff we've gone over, cool. And if I do Docker PS at this point, nothing there, right? Nothing's running. If I do Docker ls, Docker image ls, I have those. Now I have smoke ping, hello world, and archive team Docker, right? This guy right here is not used. He's just hanging out. It doesn't say that he's not used, but it's not associated with anything. All right. So if I do Docker start smoke ping. Now remember, I didn't have to install anything per se. I've just pulled this image down and I just said, okay, build it, start it.
And
Right. Now I'm running it.
It said created 5 days ago, that was the image was published.
Right.
The latest version of the.
So now if I do Docker PS, all right, it's a little bit wrapped around because we're a little bit large. But yeah, I'll just leave it big. So my container ID, this is the actual container ID. This is unique, all right? The image, the command created, when the image was created. Status, it's been up for 16 seconds. this is my mapping, so any port to 4080 goes to 80 TCP inside of it, and then the name of the image itself, or the name that I gave it. Okay, so I can go and call it that name. Now I don't know if I can make a second one. I might be able to, but it might complain about that name. Yeah, so that you can't run multiple names. The names have to be unique too. Okay.
Because that's how you address it when you're talking start and stop and stuff.
Well, you can address it with the container ID actually. So when you're doing, we'll go to swarm at the end, but we'll see how much of that we can
You
get
would have
through.
needed to change the port number anyway, that 4080, you couldn't run it.
Oh, well, that's very true as well. I wouldn't have been able to run it on 4080. I'd have to change this port right here.
Which is why on the archive team, it's running 80. Very cool.
Yeah. All right. Any questions on normal Docker usage?
Can you build a web interface for that?
Was it?
You can build that.
It's. I can. Yeah, I have to just remap this. Let's see.
What do you do?
Right, but I have to
Oh,
map
you're-
it in the VM.
You're in the VM.
Yeah, no, that's ugly. Right.
Never mind.
Well, let's just take my hands off.
So if he had installed Docker on his laptop, this would be different. He's running Docker in VM for the purposes of the demo.
Yeah, so let's say 9,000 goes to 10.10.10.7. And what was my port? 4080? 4080. Okay. Okay. So now, go back to Firefox. And where's the mouse? Alright, and I just go to localhost. This is, I forwarded this port to the VM, so localhost :9000. It doesn't work.
Are you not running IP tables or something like that?
What's that?
Are you not running some sort of firewall in your VM?
No, it doesn't. I mean, it has one, but it's
Localhost is usually
Yeah.
allowed through.
well, this is localhost on. This is just the VM, but I don't know what's up with it. But basically, like I might be able to SSH in there. I don't know what that was.
If it wasn't a VM, if it was running his native machine,
Yeah.
it would be a different.
So if I do, yeah, Docker PS is 4080, so that should have worked, but whatever. Suffice to say, it should be working. So if I, inside of the VM, what I can do is I can say netstat, or netstat, ANLP, grep listum. Oh, come on.
It's
Net tools.
Net tools.
Net tools. Docker up net tools.
Alright, so you can see that it's actually listening on that port. It's listening on IPv6, which is probably the problem. Debian has some kind of love with IPv6, even if it's internal networks, and I don't get it. I don't like it.
I was gonna say, if you're running this stuff on your laptop to test with, you could bind to localhost IP address and not anything. That way, someone else in the Wi-Fi wouldn't be able to go to 4080. As a note.
It's locally host for.
But if you,
Let me turn on supports IPv6, and then add another. Let's see if that works. What's IPv6 localhost? Like : : : 1?
just 3 colons.
I don't know. I don't play with IPv6.
You could down the Docker.
You guys, it's running. It's just, we can't get to it.
Just take my word.
Yeah.
It's running, that's
Do
all
it
you
live.
need to know.
We'll do it live. All right.
You
Do it
assume
live,
you did
is
make a
it?
good
That's the
sacrifice for
easiest.
this demo, guys.
So now Docker Compose. Docker Compose is fantastic. What it allows you to do is, instead of running all of those big commands and like, hey, I want to try to update the system, right? Well, let's say I try to update the system. I try to update my Apache or my whatever, my smoke ping. To do it programmatically, either I have to go out and figure out if there's a new image, figure out what the image I have is, compare those two. If I have the newest image, then stop. If I don't have the newest image, go download the newest image, then destroy the container I have, rebuild the container I have, and start it. Or I can run Docker Compose up. That one. So, Docker Compose allows you to use YAML to design all of your systems and run them easier, right? So I say, here's my compose file. I actually have the example compose file down here. I'll show you in a second. It's a YAML file, all right? And to run Docker Compose, I run Docker Compose -f in the YAML file. Docker Compose is not natively part of Docker. It is a separate package. So you install Docker, and you're running that, and you're having fun. That's great. You try to run Docker Compose, it's not there. It's a different package. So install Docker Compose, you'll have this. I like to do aliases, as we said before. We have that way back up there. And I don't want to run this giant command. So instead of that, I run DC. All right, so I say DC PS, DC pull, DC up -d, DC stop container name, whatever. So it's just a stand-in for Docker Compose. All right, so if I type alias, I got no aliases. Which Docker Compose? So alias. No, I thought. Alright. And I'm going to just source that file. And now, my alias, so I'd say DC PS. Alright.
Errol 3.
Maybe this is an older version. It's Debian. That might be why I was running that other version. That would be very inconvenient.
Go one lower.
Yeah, we'll see if this works. Okay, cool.
Well, it didn't work because it's.
Well, there's no containers being run by Compose.
Oh, they run differently.
Yeah. So if I do, I think they do. Let's do it. Yeah. So Docker Compose gives you the ability to make things like this. So if, remember the last one? Last time we ran smoke ping, we had that big old command line. Well, this is a nice, easier to read way of doing this. This is a compose file. In this, I say smoke ping, which is the name I've chosen for the container. Linux server smoke ping is the image. Host name is smoke ping. Container name is smoke ping. Actually, I guess this could be whatever. This is what you call when you say, hey, I want to do stuff to smoke ping. So you call that with Docker Compose. Restart unless stopped. Here's my ports. Here's my environment variables. Here's my volumes. Just like we did on the command line, but all in a nice, easy to read session. All right. So if I say, let's say Docker stop smoke ping. Get rid of it. Eventually. All right, so now it's got out of here. So DC up -d smoke ping. Here's -d. Sorry, I was playing with Swarm earlier. Okay, so it's just complaint because we're going to be looking at Swarm in a minute, but it did create it. It's just saying, hey, you're in Swarm mode. It didn't complain. It's complaining that I'm not using Swarm mode because Swarm mode is a special mode, and they're used differently. So I'm deploying it directly to this machine, whereas swarm mode, I would be deploying it to a bunch of places. Okay. And we'll look at that later. But I have smoke ping, and so if I do DCPS, boom, there you go. Bring that up for you guys. So now smoke ping's running nicer. It looks a little bit nicer. It's easier to read.
So before address.
That's probably, well, no, that should work. So there you go. Now it's running. So if I do this again, what will happen, ignoring this warning, it says smoke ping is up to date, right? So let's say that I wanted to put it on an older version. Let's see. Where's smoke ping? Let's see what versions they are. Let's see. Well, we're running low on time anyway. Basically, if it wasn't the newest version, it would go grab it and then get it up to date, right? Actually, I do know why I'm showing this. So DC stop smoke ping. DC RM smoke ping. Yes. Was it Docker image? Yes. Oh. Docker system. All right. And so if I do Docker or image ls, dang it, it's still there. Docker image or RMI. That guy. Yeah. All right, now it's gone. All right, so now if I do my Docker, now usually I just do Docker up -d and it gets all of the containers inside of that file. But I don't want to do all the containers, I just want to do smoke ping. So I do Docker up -d smoke ping. Now it's not on the system, the image isn't on the system, anything like that. Complains again, but it says, hey, I'm going to pull this, I'm pulling it. It is going like to a cell tower that's probably 2 miles away, so I mean, that's pretty good. I grew up with dial-up. And
Hey, I think everybody here did.
probably. Well, some of us probably had the phone one that you put on the phone thing.
Uh-huh.
I've never actually seen one of that.
We had cassette tapes.
And so now downloaded the newest image and it created it. All right, so it did everything that I did as a whole bunch of different commands the last time with one command. Boom, done, easy, right? Now, if I say I want to DC RM smoke ping, DC stop smoke ping. And then remove it. Go. And then I want to make it again. It already has the image, and so it just creates it. If it's the latest image, it'll just be like, hey, it's already running. As we saw before, smoke ping is up to date. If it does have an update, it'll actually go grab that new image and update it for you. So fantastic. It does have some drawbacks, like I couldn't do that script where I wanted to have like 10 of the archive team orders. I have to make 10 of those in the YAML file, which is kind of irritating.
But it would be a one-time thing.
It would be a one-time thing, which is nice. But if I wanted to scale it out, I want to make 30 of them, or break it down, I have to change all of these files, and it's really irritating. That's where Docker Swarm comes in. So, that was it. All right.
8:15.
So, Docker Compose is pretty great. I use it a lot, and you can see how, MotionEye, that was one of them. MotionEye is probably the best camera software. It's not terribly great, but
It's the best, and that says a lot about camera software.
Right. It's kind of janky, and so having a Docker image of things like this is amazing. Or the unified controller, which is really janky,
It's built like
is
a house of
amazing.
cards.
Yeah.
It's very fragile, and it's better to just have somebody else build the house of cards and use it.
Right. And so when you're dealing with complex, janky pieces of software, and I say janky in the most loving terms, I do like motion. And I do like the unified controller. It's just that they are built like a house of cards. It's
They've got the
like you
dependency
change
help.
this one dependency, you upgrade MongoDB because it's got a horrible security flaw. Well, guess what? You can't run the unified controller anymore. And so, Docker containers, they're great. All right, so Docker Swarm. Swarm allows you to deploy a lot of things and in a diverse environment. So let's say that I am a multinational corporation. I have business in the US and Australia and China and the UK, right? Well, I don't want to have my whole software stack just located in my main office in the US, right? If somebody comes from Sydney or the UK, like the UK might be okay, but Sydney would be really slow, so it'd be China. And so like I say, all right, I want to distribute this. I want to get my software stack and put it in these different places. And on top of that, I sell these particular services to just the US customers. I sell these other particular services to just the UK people or something like that. With Docker Swarm, I can literally build a compose file, set it up to where I have, like I say, I want this software stack. I want this Apache, all these different things. I put all the material out there on every one of my 4 continents, or my 4 areas of the world. So I have one in the EMEA, I have one in the UK, and I have one in the US. I can do that. So I just say deploy, and it's just like, oh, it needs one there, one there, and one there. And it just builds them in different areas. Let's say that the US goes down, right? Well, I can have it where the UK and EMEA will service the US customers. I can have it where I only want the US to be, like, I want this particular software stack to only be in the US, but not these other 2. I can do that. I can say I want it in these 2, but not this one. I can do that. There's a lot of different things that you can do with this. Remember when we were saying, like, hey, you know, I got slashed on it. All of a sudden, these 3 Apache servers aren't enough for my load. Well, I can have load monitoring services and just say, okay, it went from, you know, kind of piddling around at like 50 customers hitting the thing to 4,000 people, like ping flooding it. I can just be like, okay, now I have 1,000 of them, you know, just done, because I don't have to download the new image. I don't have to do anything. I just say, here's my cloud service. I need 1,000 of them. And they're good. So that's what Swarm kind of provides you. You have to initialize it. Now, when you do Docker Swarm init, it gets really angry at you when you do single commands, like we just saw. It's like, warning, warning, you're running a swarm. Don't do this. I want to do it. So let me do it anyway. But it's telling me, hey, you're applying things directly to the node that's not in the swarm. When you do this, that's what it initializes that. I can get rid of it, which I think I have down, further down. But the first node that you initialize, so the node is the host. Okay, so whenever I say node right now, that's the host. So that's one of these VMs. Yeah, or a physical box. Okay, it's not a container, it's the machine that the containers are running in. So I say Docker Swarm init, it initializes the first one. The Docker Swarm things are 2 categories. There's a manager and a worker. The manager manages the workload, and the workers do it. Okay, so the workers are what run the containers, and the managers are what tell the workers which containers to run and where to run. Okay, so you only need a couple managers, and you need a lot of workers. So I could have like 5 managers and 100 workers, and the workers are what are doing the heavy lifting, but the managers manage it. All right. So I can get tokens. They do tokens to build them. On my main node, with them, it actually tells me right when you make the main node, but I can say, give me a join token for manager, or give me a join token for worker, and then I hand that particular type of token to the manager or the worker that I'm building, and tell them to join. The way that I join them is I go to the next worker, and I say, hey, I want you to join this swarm, all right? So I say docker swarm join token, and give the token that my manager gave me in here. This is one that's for the, there's no compromising data in here. This is all the little VM stuff I built for the log here. So this is our token, all right, it wraps around here. And then this is the address of the main VM that I had. All right, now this is the worker token. And so I told him, hey, go talk to that guy, you're a worker, have fun. And so he joined the cluster. You can then get a cluster listing by doing docker node ls. You can look at a particular node by doing docker node inspect, node hostname, pretty, makes it look nice. Why that's default, I don't know. Or not default, oh, it's probably for programmatic things. Pretty human readable things are not generally machine readable. And so if that's probably why they have a pretty option, is because of the not pretty option is easier to machine parse. You can update the availability of nodes. So let's say that we had our clusters. Let's keep using that same example. I have the US, the UK, and EMEA. All right? I need to update EMEA. So I need to take them down. I need to update the actual physical box. We need to update the kernel, so we're going to restart the box. And that's going to cause an outage. Well, what I can do is I can tell it to drain that node. It'll move those containers off of that node onto the other nodes in the swarm. And then once it's drained, I can then take the node down and restart it, do whatever I want without impact. And then once I'm done with my maintenance on that box, I can reactivate that node and it'll put things back onto it. You can also promote and demote nodes into management. So you had your manager, and then one of your managers explodes, and you had only two, and so you're like, I need my redundancy, and so you just go to this other box and you say, you're a manager now too, and so you can promote ones that are being a worker right now into management, and then once you fix your primary manager again, you can go and demote him and be like, oh, you're not a manager anymore. And so
a node can be both a manager and a worker.
Yes, it can be both a manager and a worker, or one, or just the other. It could be any combination of that, I believe.
But it can be both simultaneously?
Well, that's what the primary node is, yeah. Primary node is the manager and it's a worker. So,
True.
I believe that is the case. I may be wrong, and they have documentation. I mean, go for it.
Why do you want us to read the documentation?
I know, right? This is a very complex subject, and I just do this for fun. So, I haven't gotten to do this at work yet, and I really want to, but we just, I don't know if we'll ever get there. So, I play with it online. So Docker swarm leave is how you take a node out of the swarm. Okay, so you want to just revert, like you're sitting there playing around, you're on your home system, and you're just like, oh, Docker swarm init. Okay, wow, this warnings are really annoying, and this system, I don't want to get rid of it. That's how you do it. Okay?
If the system that got initted as the swarm leaves, the rest of the swarm will keep up and running as long as there's another manager, right?
Right, as long as there's another manager, you should be good. We can actually play with that because I built 3 VMs just for this part of the presentation. All right, so if I do docker swarm join token manager, there's the manager token, and if I say the same thing but worker, there's worker token. You can see that the tokens are different. They're very, very close, but it's different after the dash. So it's actually got like 2 different tokens. So it's got this token, which is probably the main identifier, and then it's got these 2 different ones to wrap around. And that's the manager, that's the worker. And so you would go to another system and run this, and it would join the swarm. So now, if I do docker node ls, I can see my 3 nodes. All right, so I've already installed this on here. So I did my init, I joined as workers, and you can see that the manager status for number 1 is leader. okay? And you can see which engine version he is, what his ID is, the host names, the status, the availability, all right here. Easy to see. It's great. Now, if I wanted to actually look at a particular node, I could do docker node inspect docker 02, which is the host name. That's the actual name of the VM. And if I just, let's see what it looks like without pretty. Yeah, that's XML. It's useful, but it's not pretty.
JSON, actually.
It's JSON.
Is that JSON? Yeah. I was mistaken. So it's JSON. I don't know these
But
things.
either way, very parsable for a machine.
Yeah.
Little effort for a human.
But if I do pretty, then it's pretty.
Ish.
That's a heck of a lot prettier than the last one. And so there's my state, my availability, my address, my operating system, the architecture, all this stuff. The number of CPUs, the amount of memory, all the different logs it supports, the networks it has on it, the volumes it has on it, which is just the local host. What version of engine it is, the trust root certificate, which I don't know if that's the, I imagine that's the public one. Doesn't really matter, I'm not using these machines any after this. And then like your here's your public, this is probably your private key. So yeah, it's got all kinds of information in there, and it's pretty nice to have, right? So if I want to see what swarms are running, you know, I won't go over the drain and activate because we don't really need to see that. It just says drain and activate when you look at it. Route demote, the same thing. It'll just be like a manager or a leader or something like that. Swarm lead. If I want to look at the network, I can do Docker network ls. That'll show me all the networks that are on this machine. I can inspect specific networks and see what their type or all their settings are. There is a whole network level to Docker, so you can have management networks, you can have intercommunication networks, you can have secure networks, you can have networks that it's bridging out to the hosts. You can have all of the material from different Dockers go through one host to get to the internet, or they go through their own host, or different points of exit and entry. And so there's a lot that you can do in here, and I haven't done enough to thoroughly explain it. But suffice to say, to look at the networks, you can do Docker network ls. It will show you all the networks. You can inspect the different ones, and that will show you what's going on in that particular network. So if I do Docker network ls, I can see all the different networks, what their drive, their name is, the network ID, the drivers, and the scope. These, I believe, these 5 that say local are probably ones that you're just running with Docker. And then when I built the swarm, it built the ingress overlay network, which is the one that it communicates with other stuff with, and it links everything in with a bridge. And I think the Docker GW bridge is how everything gets in and out. But that's your list of networks, and then if I want to look at one of them, I can say Docker network inspect ingress. And it tells me all kinds of stuff. Hey, you know what? I wonder if I could do pretty. Pretty. No. Yes. And so there's the name, the scope, the driver, if it's IPv6, some of the necessary things. So you have like your subnet, what's your subnet, your gateway, and all kinds of different information about the network. And you can change this. The ingress is when you build Swarm, you build the ingress network. It by default builds, and you used to, older versions of Docker, you couldn't change it, which seems like a huge oversight to me. I'm not sure. But in newer versions, you can just go ahead and change this. You can also build your own networks and move them off of the ingress network and have like whatever different networks you want. You can build it as complex as you want to do. So, yeah, and then here's all of its peers down here. Let's see. So now we want to actually look at the swarm. we can do I want to just deploy a swarm named swarm using the compose file. So I say docker stack deploy -c, which is compose, docker swarm.yaml, swarm. Remember when we did docker swarm init? I think it creates a default one called default or swarm. It gets a little confusing when you start dealing with this stuff. Then if I want to see the services that are running in Docker Swarm, I have to use Docker Service ls. If I do Docker ls, it's not going to show them. They're in the swarm, not the local. And if I want to see the actual status of every one of the swarms inside of our swarm, there's Docker Service ps, and then I can say swarm archive team. And inside of this swarm file, I have archive team. I'll show you in a second. And it will show me all of the ones for that particular atom. If I build other, like if I have archive team and archive team 2, I can say swarm underscore archive team and it'll show me one. I can say archive team 2 and it'll show me the other. They're in the same swarm, but they are two different atoms, you should say, or molecules. Then you have Docker stack rm swarm, which gets rid of it. You're still in swarm mode, it's just getting rid of these things that you built. This is a swarm file, it is a compose file, and you build it just like a regular compose file. Except, down here in deploy, I say, I make a new one and I say deploy, and I say mode replicated, replicas 20. Alright, so I can just say, I want 20 of them, I want 50 of them. And you can actually grow and shrink them on the fly too. So you start with 20 and then I say, I want 50. And I just type out a command and got 50. So let's take a look. Yeah, we'll see about that. Alright, so if I do Docker service ls, there are no Dockers running, or there's no swarm running right now. So if I do Docker stack deploy -c Docker swarm.yaml swarm. Alright, so it creates the swarm default network, it creates the service swarm.archive team, and then if I do my ls again, boom, it's running 13 replicas out of 20, it's building.
Why don't you turn off your NIC, please?
What's that?
You should turn off your cellular modem.
Oh, that'll be fine. Yeah, maybe you're right.
Because archive team lawyers automatically download the latest configuration file and boot.
It does.
It takes a process.
Yeah. So I just shut off my wireless on this, so it might not get over at 20, but so or 13. Because I basically just killed them in the middle of them doing stuff. So if I do Docker service ps swarm archive team, you can see their statuses. And so here's the ID, and just like all the other ones in Docker, it's looks basically the same, and you can call it by that ID. Then you have the name. So the name of these, I said I want 20 replicas. And so it names them swarm underscore archive team 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, so on and so forth. The image, which image it's using, so it's using the archive team warrior Docker file latest image. The node, this is the fun thing with swarm. Docker 1, Docker 1, Docker 1, Docker 2, Docker 3, Docker 3, Docker 3, Docker 2, Docker 2, Docker 2. And so it's load balancing. It's moving them to the different VMs that I have running. So I have this cluster of VMs, and instead of just piling everything into one, I didn't tell it where to put them. I just said, put it in the swarm. And I didn't specify to like limit it or anything like that. And so it just said, okay, and it just splots them all out all over the place. And so it load balances them across these different small machines.
So if you were a website, if you ran a website and you had 3 physical servers in a data center and you got slashdotted, you would come in here and just ask for 10 more in your swarm. And they would just start putting them on your different physical hosts depending on load.
Right, or like you have your 3 physical servers and you have your swarm built, and then you go to AWS and be like, hey, I need a partnership with you. Can I get an expandable node or something like that? And then you say, oh, I got slash dotted. Grow into that node. Okay, the slash dotting finished. Come right back off of it. And so this month, like last month, your data center fees were $800. This next month, you made a lot more money, but your data center fees were $3,000 because you had to pay Amazon a whole bunch of money for that big spike in traffic that you got. And then the next month after that, you're back down to $800 because that big well of bandwidth and everything is gone. So you can expand and deploy.
If you want to know how Amazon gets cheap, you use this.
Yeah.
And then in the middle of the day, as the morning starts and your website gets popular, let's just say you run an HR service, HR website. Well, probably 9 to 5 is pretty popular. But after 6, you can automatically grow or shrink your swarm. And since you're paying per minute, per hour for your VMs.
Yeah.
Are they distributed by CPU usage or?
I'm not sure how. There's probably a lot of different options you can do. I haven't played with Swarm enough to know that.
Do they stay on the various nodes? They don't move around once they deploy?
No. If I kill a node, well, let's try that. So let's say, or he's also, it tells me it's running and it's been running for how many ever seconds, just like Docker PS does.
I mean, it's only load balancing on deployment. It's not load balancing after the fact, right?
I don't think it's load balancing after the fact, but I don't know if you can do that or not. There's probably ways of configuring it. I'm not sure.
Could be the EE version.
Right. So we're still 13 out of 20. And let's say we do Docker, what was that command? The drain one, let's see. Node update availability drain. So, Docker node update. Docker update. Okay. So now, check this guy. The Docker 03s seem to be going away.
It says shutdown.
What's that?
It says shutdown.
Oh, okay.
And so the way I
Yeah,
see Docker
shut
is,
down, rejected.
That's
because your internet's all screwed up now.
Oh, yeah.
So, and the thing about Docker is that unlike a VM where you would like VMware, you would vMotion a state, because in Docker you're not configuring the Docker image. You're just essentially booting a dozen of these, and then you pass through a folder, right? You don't care if the Docker image shuts down and restarts.
Right.
Because you're not, like, if you're doing a website, and the way I was like this, is let's say you were to use, you make a website, a Docker image for WordPress. If you were to go in and start editing WordPress files, and then you go reboot your container, you're gonna lose all those changes because it boots it back off that image. So because you don't edit the files, you just make a new image. You don't care if it shuts down and restarts somewhere else because it's always referencing the same files, which would be your your actual database or something like that. So it doesn't necessarily move the state; it just shuts it out over here, boots it up over there. But you're always referencing the same database or something like that, so nothing changes. It's radically different from a availability point of view from VMs.
Right.
And that's part of why I don't like Dockers, is because I always boot something and then go tamper with it.
Right.
And then I lose all the changes next time I blink.
Yeah, you can tamper with things, and if you did like your Docker-exec IT bash, you can get into the container and screw around with it. And I've had to do that before when actually, it might have been MotionEye. It was MotionEye or one of the other, it's probably MotionEye or SmokePing. But there was a problem inside the container. They had updated it, and I went in and like it just wouldn't boot. I went into it, I looked at the logs, and it's just like they had updated a particular package that broke the stuff. And so as the responsible citizen of open source software, I figured out what the problem was, I went to the GitHub site, I opened a bug, and I said, in this version, you have a problem here, and this is how you need to fix it, but this is a workaround right now. Have a nice day. And he thanked me and fixed it, pushed a new version, and la-di-da, everybody's got it fixed.
How do you go into the container? Is it like opening up a terminal, container terminal or something?
Let me get rid of these. All right,
You
so those
essentially
are
SSH into it.
So Docker.
Think like that, but there's a Docker connect.
Yeah, so I got the smoke thing still running. All right, so if I go and, I never remember it because I don't use it very often. Let's see. Last time.
Not shy.
Run, yeah, run-it. So if I do Docker run-it, well, run container name, I can say smoke thing -it bash. No, I think it's an exec. I might have to change that. I'll look at that. But I think that one might not have bash. So, but you would go in and it would give you a bash shell.
Have you tried this SH?
Oh, you can try it.
It should have some shell on there.
There's probably no path in it.
Right. I'm whatever. I'm not sure. Like, I'll look it up real quick. And
But you typically don't, right? You would never need to. If you were running a WordPress site, your WordPress instance really doesn't have much content because it's all referenced in the database. So you would just give me 5 WordPresses, please. And in the compose file or whatever, you would say, here's my database, because the Docker image expects these variables, expects your images folder, expects the database location, expects some sort of DS entry, a couple specs like that. And that's how you would dynamically expand, which is why I think is a useful purpose for Docker, is very quickly deploying multiple of the same thing, which is very commonly used in websites. You would deploy extra 5 websites, extra 5 web servers, all referencing the same database externally, right? Externally running on a different Docker file. I know that MariaDB has a Docker image for their database that expects a cluster. So the first thing it does is boots up and goes and grabs a cluster. Joins the cluster and replicates itself, and boom, I have another one. It's like, ooh, I need 4 more database servers. You hit, give me 4 more. It goes, grabs the, boots up, sees that there's a cluster master somewhere, grabs all the database, and you now have 5
you laugh, but it's
What
working.
is Shotgun doing that he needs all this magic?
Oh yeah, that's really fun.
Oh, you should have
Should,
been
you
We're
need
at-
to
we're at
come closer
Microsoft
to
Table
a
Shop.
window or
You should have
something.
sent it to the show. They had less
The old rabbit ears you've seen?
Well, as I said, come closer to a window, you'll get more,
There you go.
said that.
Okay.
Something about Trump.
So I'm pretty sure the Docker team one has it. So you can see the Docker team's it's pretty big. But compared to a VM, that was maybe like 200 meg.
I got 140 meg, I think.
Yeah, it wasn't
well,
that-
and
it's-
VMs can grow and grow and grow and grow, and the more you throw at them, they can grow to a point that eventually they
Right.
just crash themselves.
But at 140 megs, that's like a very, 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 very minimal Debian install.
So the smoke ping was like 20 meg
Right.
because they don't include bash,
Right.
right? You don't include the stuff you don't need.
So if
Whereas
I do,
if you had a VM, you have the whole kernel, you have to have a whole, bootloader, you have to have a whole
You
network
guys
driver.
have sold me on Docker, okay? You don't need to keep selling it.
So actually, well, I'll let you finish.
For the record, I don't use it at all because
It sounds great.
I tamper with too many things. I booted up. Each
That's
time
what
you
you were
use it-
saying before, where it's like you want to learn the system, you want to play around with it. You don't do that.
Right.
You can.
I don't know, I like it because I tamper with things and I just need to delete it all
Sure,
and
and
start over.
and yes, but I may have so one of the issues is that if you want to install something and go into it, tweak it to your liking, you got to keep track of what you did, right? And we're trying to set up a BitTorrent mirror for InfoCon, which is a repository of conference videos.
I thought Infocom was a game company.
No.
So I set up the BitTorrent, I just grabbed their Docker file, went in there, booted it up, was like, oh, I want to adjust some flags. Great, everything's fine running, and it reboots and I lost everything. Like, come on. And then I just went ahead and installed it on the local machine because it was a dedicated machine and I didn't care. And then I could tamper with it and make it all just the house of cards, my house of cards, and then let it be. And just hope it doesn't reboot. Because the house of cards will fall apart. But if you want to use someone else's house of cards, Docker is great.
But didn't Dan make like a point that you could have like your
I think it's
data
because I'm running
path
too
is
old of
different
a
for
version
your
of Docker.
container?
Sure, yeah.
Like you could save, it seems like really
Yes.
easy. Set it up so it saves the data to a
So-
directory that's not in the.
But I didn't change
For
the data in
Docker
this instance.
1.3
It was
Sounds like
like,
it's on
you
you,
can do
man.
that.
Oh, 100%.
That's right.
yeah, it just doesn't align with my,
It just doesn't work.
like
on
I went in there and was
Docker. It's
editing
probably
thing
because I'm
files in
dead.
random places on the server. And
I-
that's not something that I could
The
easily
reason I
replicate
probably had
to a Docker file.
in user local is probably because I plugged in a newer version of Docker and I built it because Debian's version is probably ancient.
Can you provide an exact path like bin sh?
I mean, oh, well maybe, let's see.
Just sh? Yeah. Nothing.
But there's a different way of doing it. You can do Docker.
It's complaining about the -it part.
Yeah.
No, executable file not found in path. So maybe it is actually trying to execute the -it.
I feel like if you put exec and then quotes, exec archive team quote bin sh, totally screwed it up.
I just killed it.
I just got one question. Are you totally dependent on these people that write the software to make an image, or do you make your own images and stuff?
You can make your own images, but in my capacity, I'm using other people's images.
Because I've never seen an image. Of course, I just use Software Manager, but
This all runs through Docker Hub, right?
I've never seen like a Docker
Well,
option.
I have
or
GitHub
anything.
too, but yeah, most of it's pretty much Docker Hub.
Is there a way that you could create an image and run it completely offline without using any of these cloud services?
Probably.
Yes.
I mean, the image is stored locally, so more than likely, yes. I don't know if you can run your own repository. You probably can.
I know that the big feature of Docker EE is
Well,
the ability to run your own private repository.
but hosted by them.
Hosted by them, yes.
Yeah, it might be that you can run CE and make your own repository. It's just probably harder.
Well, with CE, you have a private repository. So only you can get to it with your login.
That is supposed to work.
To get rid of the -i,
That's
because it keeps trying to act like it's trying
You
to.
read -i and
dash
-t
I.
to do the location.
Well, this site has it doing it as a different pattern, so let me try it this other way. Maybe it's parsing it weird.
Yeah, like I said, it looks like it's trying to parse -i as an executable.
There we go. So I think in like newer versions you can flip it or something like that, or maybe I'm not sure.
It's not as positionally dependent.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. I'll have to try that at home on a newer version. It might be that I just had it backwards and whatever. So you exec -i and -t. I'm not sure what those do. We can go look at the man page later. Archive team, which is the name, or you can do that string, and then what you're trying to execute. So I'm executing this. Now I'm inside of the container. Okay. So I can do df-h. That's the file system that is the container. I can do like ds, Prox, right? Those are all the processes. These are all of the processes that are running in this container. So if you think of it like a VM, it's only running 10 processes.
Dan, 10 to 9.
Yeah, we're done. So are there any other questions?
You had run 3 VMs there for your demonstration. Could you potentially run them as just Docker containers, rather? 3 different containers to run your demonstration?
Containers containing the container.
No.
I don't know, you can maybe do something like that. I don't turn it off yet.
Don't turn it off yet?
No, you have to hit the record button to save the stuff, so.
I was wondering if it's still running. Don't worry about it.
Hello.
Just leave it.
He's the one who told me to turn it
I
off.
said no, is it still running?
Just
Yeah, it's still running.
leave it alone.
Alright. Figure out.
He doesn't want to lose it.
No, I was
So,
gonna
if there are any
record
other
that.
questions? Yes, sir.
Why Swarm versus Kubernetes?
Kubernetes, I have not played with or at all. It is something that I want to look at, and it is probably equally better.
Who developed Swarm? Because Kubernetes is from Google. So it's probably a third-party solution. Swarm, if Swarm's from Docker, that's probably their own solution.
Potentially. I have heard that Kubernetes is pretty neat, but
I've actually heard about like
It's
all
okay.
of the public cloud, Google, Amazon, they all offer Kubernetes instances.
It's for orchestration usually.
Yeah. I've not heard of someone, Amazon Swarm Service, AS, never mind.
Right. Okay. So,
Thank you for
Thank you.
putting together.
Pull out the power board.
No. This is our